Hello again, and welcome to the Fantasy Sultans. It's the most wonderful time of year. We've said it many times, but it is the most wonderful time of the year. It's not Christmas. It's fantasy football draft season.
Yes, we are ready.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. We've got to share our preparations for a draft. Now, you need to be ready for a draft. You need to have refreshment close hand. I am not going to show it because I'll get in trouble. However, the Fantasy Sultans recommend the following snacks. I like the peanut kind. For
I'll go with the
buddy
chocolate.
Caddy Bob, the red ones have been taken out. And then the other Fantasy Sultan approved snack for the draft. Chex Mix.
Oh, yeah. Got to be the Chex Mix.
Got to have the Chex Mix.
That's right. We're importing. We are importing Chex Mix. Yes, we are.
and the thing I'm going to say, I guess, by way of doing this in the beginning of our podcast for the draft, is to emphasize, you got to be prepared and you got to stay on your toes. Hence the candy. I'm not sitting here eating candy all the time. Although you couldn't tell by my body, but you got to have stuff that's handy and there, and you don't want to make a mess. You don't want to have a full course meal. You don't want to have sandwiches. Although, remember Johnny I pulled the Wawa sandwich.
Oh, we
year?
love that one. Yes, we did.
Yeah, he was doing that to just stick it to me. I remember that, Johnny I. You're buying me breakfast when we're there. But anyhow, you want to have that handy. You want to be ready for the draft. Now, listen, the draft is not a 5-hour ordeal. I mean, I'm trying to think we've
it's
had
not.
Some
you mean it's not?
we had some 4. Well, when you do it online, it moves along a lot quicker.
Yeah.
When you were doing it, manually with the big board and stuff. Oh my God. But we take a break halfway through, but online it's a lot different. And that's how, fantasy football has changed. And, fantasy football has also changed for the folks in New Jersey. Mike, tell them.
That's right. You can now hear us starting this Labor Day weekend on the new Fox Sports Radio New Jersey. You can hear it at 93.5 FM as well as 1450 AM. And then down the Jersey Shore on 100.1 HD3 and 95.9 HD3. So we are taking it up a notch a little bit. We are. I mean, hey, we've done this thing before. We were just kibitzing about this. This is our 11th year doing fantasy football on the radio. Of course, it was at one point we did it in at the Jersey Shore, and then we moved the thing to internet and a podcast form, and of course now you can see us on YouTube. And now we are moving back to radio. So hey, radio just comes around again, doesn't it?
Hey, we're expanding our horizons. And again, the show now, if you're an avid subscriber to our podcast and you listen to our podcast, you will notice some differences because the podcast is going to drop on Thursday. Since we're doing the Sunday warm-up show, we're going to kind of look ahead to that day and Sunday and Monday. And, that's going to be the difference, but it's still going to be the same thing. It's still going to be you and I. It's a show. It's going to be a show. We'll have import-exports. That's right. Importer, exporter, that's us. The same old shtick. He's the Hall of Famer Mike Scheck. I'm Tripp Rogers. Got to introduce us today. Oh, well. All right, let's talk. All right, draft. We talked about draft preparations. The thing about doing mock drafts, they can help. And I would do a couple just to get you, get a feel for where you are.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you something. None of the mock drafts I've done, and I mock drafted, we both mock drafted. And I mean, doesn't mean hill beats. You can say you're going to target X, Y, and Z. You're going to end up with X, AA, ZZ, and C because it doesn't work out.
Well, and what I want to say, to your point is that I think, because on ESPN, you can sort the draft by level of experience. So you can go into a beginner draft, you can go into an expert draft, you can go intermediate draft. I think if you go expert draft, you're not getting a true form. I think beginner is actually a little bit more realistic, because not to say that you're playing with beginners in the case, but we know, and we've seen it before, people start panicking. It's called fantasy FOMO. And the reason why is it's the fear of missing out, basically.
Yeah.
We've seen quarterback runs, we've seen tight end runs. It happens. So I think if you play at a more realistic level, I would say you start off at the beginner level, because I did a couple of mock drafts earlier this month, and I think it was a little bit more realistic to where, okay, you're going to see some more players. Now, again, keep in mind when you're doing a mock draft, you're also going to see a lot more auto drafters on there, and people are going to drop out after the first couple of rounds. Whereas if you're doing a live draft with everybody, now you could have some auto drafters. We've had some in the past. We've actually had an auto drafter win the league at one point, but that's beside the point. Maybe that should have been our strategy one year, just auto draft.
Well, but you're absolutely right. The auto draft, and the thing about an auto draft is it will kind of throw the pace off. And something you brought, I wanted to talk about this early on in our podcast this week, but last Thursday night I did a draft. A friend of mine's wife was in her work league, and she knew nothing about fantasy football. She said, "Tripp, can you help me?" And I said, "Sure, no problem." So this draft was unique because it's the first time I've been involved with a draft that has a super flex position, meaning you could have two quarterbacks in the lineup. So, and I called you and I said, Mike, super flex, two quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. And we had the second pick overall. And I told you last week, not a fan of CMC. Well, the first, I was hoping it was taken first. No, first person taken, Patrick Mahomes. And so immediately I said, okay, I got to go with quarterback, Josh Allen. Here's the part of it that's funny. You get back around to 19, second round, 9th pick. A.J. Brown still on the board. Got him as my wide receiver because everybody was taking quarterbacks. One team took two quarterbacks with the first two picks. But the ultimate in this draft, and I'm not mentioning names because I don't want to embarrass, but we have mentioned time and time again, I think, on Fantasy Sultans, the legend of 5 quarterback Steve. This was equaled by 4 quarterback Luke, who picked a quarterback in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds.
Is he maybe a soothsayer thinking that he's going to get injured, all his quarterbacks?
Well, okay, here's now I've got it right here. First was Jordan Love, and that was with his pick in the 3rd round. Then it was Justin Herbert. Then it was Caleb Williams. Then it was Jaden Daniels. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, that was ridiculous. But I'll tell you something. I feel really good about the team that was drafted. Again, getting A.J. Brown with the 19th pick overall. That was great. Oh, by the way, second quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. So I got Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence. And, how about we draft a third quarterback? Next to last round, I took Bo Nix. I feel good about that because Bo Nix is going to sit on the bench.
Yeah.
But there could be some lightning in a bottle. And he might be somebody I need. And remember, I'm going to need him for 1 week at least, or 2 weeks, because I have 2 quarterbacks on a bye. So enough about this. I mean, I'd be curious to see how we do in this league. But let's get down to the nitty gritty and talk a little draft strategy. Now, we talked about it last week, Mike. I think we've stuck to the wait on a quarterback strategy.
Yeah.
And then last year, we kind of pivoted. We said, okay, let's look at a quarterback, maybe 4th, 5th round, 6th round, maybe. And we kind of said, let's get somebody. And I think we did. But again, you got to see how the drafts go. Some drafts are quarterback heavy. Some drafts are not. The thing about it is it depends on where you are in the draft. Now, again, I was in the number 2 position. So I pivoted on my quarterback strategy and took a quarterback my 1st round pick. Would I do that in a 1 quarterback league? No. But I might, the thing about it is that with these quarterbacks, if one falls to you, and depends on where you are in the draft, and this is important to think about, and I think this is something we really have to emphasize on this show. If you're picking on either end, 1, 2, 3, 4, 9, 10, 11, 12, in a 12-team league, you've got to think what's going to happen because it's a long time to get back to you. And better you start the run than to get lost in it. And I say this because I'm drafting 10th in a draft we have on Friday night. I think I may go quarterback as early as the 3rd round because I'm going to come back and this is going to be pick number 26, 27. And I might go for a quarterback because I want to get somebody decent. So something to think about where you are in the draft. If you're in the middle for the Sultans draft, I'm 6th. So, I'll be kind of in the middle. So if a run starts, I can jump on it. Yeah, I'm not going to miss that run. But if you're on either end of the draft, you've got to really kind of prepare on that.
Well, I'm going to say that I think you got to be thinking best player available each round. I mean, you only get 1 pick per round, so you got to make it your finest pick ever. There is no do-overs. There's a waiver wire, but there are no do-overs. So you need to be spot on with the picks, and it's a very difficult choice because you have to choose only 1 guy per round. And we don't know. We're going to give you the players that we think that we think are going to have a great year, but we don't know if they're going to get injured. We can't factor injuries into the preparation. And, it's funny that we look at fantasy football because a lot of expectations are brought into the season. And there are some players who had just awful years last year and that they're projected to be so great again. And it's like, well, could it happen? Could it happen? We don't know. It's just like CJ Stroud. I mean, he had an explosive year. Nobody predicted that last year.
My daughter did.
And everybody's saying that he's going to, Stephanie, right?
Stephanie rode the wave into the playoffs,
But I'll say nobody expected that. And do I think that Stroud's going to do well this year? Yeah, I do. But I don't think he's going to have the same numbers as he did last year. I think I don't want to say, that was a fluke per se, but again, I just don't think that Houston is going to be as great of a team as they were last year. But we'll see what happens in the end, and that's why we predict stuff at the beginning of the year because you don't know, and that's what fantasy football is. Preseason, we don't see a lot anymore in preseason. We used to see a lot of players get a lot of time, and now it's like, no. I mean, you take a look at Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers. He only played 1 game, and he only played like a series or 2. That's it. And, now you got to base last year's performance on what's going to happen this year. Is he going to be like last year, or is he going to take the next step? There's a big if there. We don't know. That's the thing with fantasy football. It's a whole lot of ifs.
And the other part of it is, if you're not sure about a player, let somebody else make the mistake. I know this sounds really strange, but you stand by your pick. And, in the draft we're doing tomorrow night, number 1 pick is Mac, the owner of an I Suck at Fantasy Football t-shirt. We're going for his 2nd t-shirt this year. He'll be picking number 1 tomorrow night. So, he'll have at it. I am sure he'll screw the draft up. Yes, Mac, I know you're listening. And yes, I did just say that. But I have confidence. I have complete knowledge. but again, and let's go into draft strategy. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
We're going to take 1 through 4. All right. First of all, also remember ADP is your friend. It will tell you who is doing well. Let it be your guide for the first couple of rounds. The thing of it is that keep track and keep an eye on who people are grabbing, because you can get some very big value picks, players that drop on the board. 1 through 4, listen, you cannot go wrong. I think, I mean, you're looking at CMC, CeeDee Lamb, of course, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson. You can't go wrong. You get one of those 4 guys, you're going to have a good team, unless they get injured. But that's what I'm saying. You can't go wrong. You're picking 4 through 8. You've got some choices. And the thing about it is, in that first round, the first 4 picks you have should be 4 starters. Don't pick 3 wide receivers, because, well, you can start 3 because you got to flex, but you're going to be hurt in the running back position. Wide receivers are plentiful. Wide receivers you can wait on. Of course, an elite wide receiver you grab, obviously, but especially 4 to 8, you've got to look at, first 4 rounds, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, especially if you're in, like I say, that 5, 6, 7, 8 bracket. 9, 10, 11, and 12, different story. You get 2 picks, and then you're going to sit for a while. And that's why you're going to make a bold move. What does our buddy, the guru, John Hanson, always say, Mike?
You got to zig when everybody zags.
Bingo. So that's where you could do some things. I think the back end of that first round, the back end of the first round, again, you're still going with first round choices, but that flip around, that's where you can, make some changes. And like I said, I think given the NFL is such a big quarterback league, I might go quarterback that second round. I honestly, I'm really thinking that this year, because again, you want to get yourself a big quarterback. You want to get a Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes. You might do.
I mean, I do. I agree with that. I mean, I would say maybe hold off until maybe round 3 and see if they're available still in your league. Because I think that there are about 8, 10, maybe even 12 quarterbacks that you can comfortably draft this year. I'm seeing Brock Purdy go 7th or 8th round. I'm seeing Trevor Lawrence in those positions.
Yes, I agree.
Maybe somebody wants to take a jab or a stab, let's say, on Caleb Williams or even Jaden Daniels late. Those are possibilities. Now, again, they are rookies, so, we have to temper our thoughts, so to speak, to what it could be. But you never know. They could end up being like a CJ Stroud, or they could be a Bryce Young. So 2 ends of the spectrum there. But personally, I think the first 4 picks, if you're going early in the draft, I think you got to go running back. I still think you might want to go running back later. In the middle is where you try to maybe take a wide receiver, but because you got to think about, if you don't get a Christian McCaffrey or a Breece Hall or a Bijan Robinson, are you going to really be comfortable taking somebody like an Alvin Kamara later on in the 2nd or 3rd round and then feel comfortable that that's going to be your running back? Because you got to realize that the first 3 picks, you have the advantage the first round, but in the 2nd round, you're picking at the end of the round. So are those players going to be available? Which is an interesting point that you had made a little bit earlier about the Superflex League. You took a quarterback in the first pick because you figured that the quarterback was not going to be there at that spot. So this is the strategy you have to think of. And I think, you and I always say it all the time, you need to tailor your strategy by position. And I think that if you start drafting and your first 4 picks is either 2 running backs or 2 wide receivers and a running back and a quarterback, maybe tight end, I think you're better off than by going, the tight end quarterback. I think that screws up the equation a little bit if that's your first 4 picks, if 2 of your first 4 picks are a quarterback and a tight end, because now you're at a disadvantage at wide receiver and running back. I think, yeah, you could probably get away with having one of each position, but it all depends, again, who you take at those certain spots, because you could be at a disadvantage.
All right. One thing, by the way, I didn't mention this before. The league I was talking about, by the way, was a 10-team league. And 10-team leagues, you've got a better player pool.
Yes,
so that's
do.
something else also to think about. But the other thing, we're talking about quarterbacks real quick, and I want to mention this because I always say this every year. But if you take a quarterback with a late bye, week 11 or later, and I'm going to look at my list here, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, and Jaden Daniels. Take one quarterback. You don't need two. You can pick up somebody on the waiver wire as the season goes on. And the chances, again, unless the quarterback gets injured, you're not subbing him out. You're going to take one guy and you're going to stick with him. If you have two and you start to try and play play which one is best, you're going to screw yourself up. I'm just saying that. Running back, a little different. You want to play matchups, you can. Wide receiver, yeah. But when you have an elite stud guy, you're starting him every week. Unless he's injured. That would be the only reason why you wouldn't. All right. So let's, again, I think we got to go with general draft strategy, or what we're thinking about this year. Mike, who are the players that you are targeting or you like? And then who are the players you do not like this year?
Well, I will say that I do like Isaiah Pacheco in Kansas City. Not only did he bring 44 receptions, but he was an elite in games when Jerick McKinnon missed them. So he had 21.7 touches and 99 yards per game on average when that happened. So, he's a big playmaker, and you can get him in round 2. What about Jaleel McLaughlin of Denver? Now, he ranked 4th in yards after contact in every attempt. And Sean Payton, he likes to be a pass game whisperer. So he may get him involved out of the backfield. Since 2014, every Payton offense finished in the top 4 in targets. So, he's a player that I would definitely want to grab. Another player I would want to grab is George Pickens in Pittsburgh. Now, I know a lot of people are not on Pittsburgh's bandwagon, and there's good reason not to be, because of the Arthur Smith, for one, and, people not 100% feeling the Mike Tomlin vibe as of late in Pittsburgh. And of course, Russell Wilson will be the starter over Justin Fields, which is an interesting move, by the way. We kind of figured that would be the case when Russell Wilson was kind of not, when he was brought over in free agency, but Justin Fields combination, of course, as probably an insurance policy. But going back to Pickens, every move that the Steelers made in the offseason is kind of an endorsement for Pickens, because they kind of did everything for him. Deontay Johnson went to Carolina, so now that makes him the number 1 wide receiver. So he's a guy who didn't do as great as expected last year, but he will have his fair share this year. I think he will do well, and he will shine in that offense. Another person that I want to draft is Kyle Pitts. And I know year after year, fantasy owners have been getting burned by him, but it's a different era in Atlanta now. And now you have Kirk Cousins at quarterback. So I think that Kyle Pitts should benefit from that situation in Atlanta. And of course, Arthur Smith not being there is another reason. New offensive coordinator. I think things are trending up in Atlanta, and he's a guy that you want. Another guy you want is Bijan Robinson in Atlanta. I'm definitely for him. Last year, I was not for him at the 8th pick overall. This year, I have him at around the 8th pick overall, and I agree with that pick. He's a guy that could even go before that. He can go top 5. He's got the talent, and he can get it done. So, again, I would definitely look at Bijan as a target.
Okay. I'll throw a couple out there. First of all, I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. He was great last year. He's a guy I would like to get. And where I'm drafting, might have a chance to have him. Again, he is a guy you want to look at. He's a number one receiver. I don't know. Back end of the first round or early second round is where you want to get him. Another guy who I really like, and I'm looking at, and I think can really do some damage in fantasy this year, is quarterback Kyler Murray. You know, he's kind of been forgotten. Arizona's kind of been forgotten. But in the offseason, well, Kyler Murray got Marvin Harrison Jr., and he's not bad. You know, he was the top receiver taken in the draft. I think Kyler Murray is going to be somebody who, again, you're looking for a quarterback later on. You don't want to waste an early pick on the big guns. Kyler Murray could be your guy, and he fits the mobile quarterback trend that you have in the NFL. Last year, Devon Achane was golden boy, and he was on the waiver wire early. If you grabbed him, paid off. I love Miami. I love that offense. I love the coach. I loved Hard Knocks. It was great. He's a guy you want to grab too. And again, these guys were saying we hope we can get, but again, people are listening to us, so we have no chance of getting any of these guys. You know that, Mike. You know, they're going to listen to it. We're not going to have it. So, and then last but not least, of the people who I really like this year, feeling good about, Chris Olave for New Orleans. And the reason I like him is because I think New Orleans is going to, I don't know if New Orleans is going to be better than last year. I mean, last year they almost made the playoffs. That division around them is going to be tough because I think everybody's improved in that division. And ironically, I think New Orleans, I mean, yeah, they're okay in the quarterback position. But I think Olave is somebody who, don't be afraid to grab him. Don't be afraid to target him. He's not going to hurt you. I think he's going to be really good. Players to avoid, Mike. I'll take this first because I got a couple. Number one, quarterback Deshaun Watson of Cleveland. A little birdie told me from Cleveland, rumors are Deshaun Watson's arm is shot. And, the Browns kept 4 quarterbacks. 4 quarterback Browns. They kept 4 quarterbacks, and that's unheard of. But I think it plays into that narrative. They're not sure about Deshaun Watson, and they don't want to let their guys go. They let Joe Flacco walk in the offseason, and I think there is some real concern in Cleveland. So I would avoid Deshaun Watson. Ezekiel Elliott is back in Dallas. Every time I'm doing a mock draft, he keeps popping up. No, he was awful last year in New England, and I think he's going to be awful this year. I think the Dallas Cowboys, believe it or not, even though the Cowboys have some of the star receivers, I'm not loving the Cowboys this year. I mean, Prescott, they paid CeeDee Lamb. He'll be great. I think Dak will be okay. That offensive line is great, but I just think their running game is terrible. Speaking of the Dallas Cowboys last year, Tony Pollard, he's gone to Tennessee. I've avoided him lately. No, nothing to do with him. And last, but certainly not least, the quarterback of the New York Football Giants, Daniel Jones. If you watched Hard Knocks, there is no way you're going to have Daniel Jones on your fantasy football team. No way. And the Giant offense is going to be awful this year, with the exception perhaps of Malik Neighbors. And it pains me to say that, but every year I'm killing the Jets and the Giants because that's what I do. Right, Mike?
That's right. And I'm going to go with a New York quarterback that you should avoid as well. And that would be Aaron Rodgers. That's right. I just am not feeling Aaron Rodgers this year. I mean, he's coming back from an injury. We don't know how that's going to be. He's 40 years old. We just don't know. I mean, he could end up having a good year, But again, it's the Jets. You just never know. A lot of eggs are put in one basket, and you just never know.
But I do like Garrett Wilson. I think Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall too. I think that both of them did well last year, even with the quarterback issues in New York. So, if Aaron Rodgers plays the season, oh man, their numbers will be off the charts. They're guys to target.
Puka Nacua for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, he is being drafted late 1, early round 2. He's had some injury problems in the offseason, especially the past several weeks. Cooper Kupp, all signs are pointing that he is fully healthy. I know that Nacua had an amazing season, but you know what? I just don't like the position that he's being drafted in. Not to say he's not going to have the numbers. I just would not take him at that spot. It's definitely an avoid situation. Same with Malik Neighbors for the New York Giants. I would say that I like his ability. I think it's a good situation, but if the X factor here is got to be Daniel Jones. If he does not perform, I think those numbers for Malik Neighbors goes down, and I don't think he's worthy of a top round 1 pick. I don't think so at all.
But again, I've seen Neighbors go maybe 3rd round, and I think I'd be okay with him in the 3rd round. I think. I'm not saying I would. Boy, I'm getting like Mad Dog leaning into the microphone, aren't I? I'm doing the Mad Dog thing. But again, Neighbors, the Giants, I just don't know. I just don't know. Neighbors is a good wide receiver, and Daniel Jones has a piece of the puzzle. But I agree with you, Mike. I agree with you on that one. Do you have any others or?
Well, I want to toss out 2 other sleeper picks. Okay. Devin Singletary for the New York Giants. I think he's going to have a big season. He's a player that you could draft probably 6th, 7th round or even later. Another player you could draft, Jerome Ford in Cleveland. Nick Chubb is dealing with an injury. He's coming back from the ACL. How will he be? I think it looks like he's not going to play the first 4 games. So, he's definitely an early player that you would want to grab for Jerome Ford. Definitely a player that you want to grab. And you know what? I'm going to toss out another one. I'm going to say Demario Douglas for the New England Patriots. Number 1 wide receiver, and he's being targeted late in drafts. This could be value for you. He's a player when everybody might be going after a kicker, they might be going after a defense. Demario Douglas may still be on the board, and you can grab him in that spot because we know some players owners like to take defenses early. And I'm not talking about even like round 8. I'm talking about like even around 11 or 12 instead of taking it the last 3 rounds with a defense and a kicker. But Demario Douglas will be there. I know not a lot are loving that New England Patriots offense. Jacoby Brissett, will it be Drake May down the line? Of course, the future is Drake May, but this season, Jared Mayo, the verdict is out as who's going to be the quarterback. Looks like it might be Brissett, but who knows? He could pull a week 1 surprise and put May in there. So we just don't know. But again, a wide receiver that you would want.
Again, the new era in New England begins. And again, that's the other thing. You talk about fantasy. You've got a number of new coaches. You've got a number of new coordinators. And that will also play into your thoughts and how you're going to do and who to look for. I just think you're starting week 1. You more so, and it's getting that way. If they only go to 2 preseason games, it's going to be even worse. If they go to an 18-game season, 2 preseason games, I mean, you're not going to have any idea. I mean, people can say, we can say, but we don't know. And that's part of it. You're basing it on last year and what they can do this year. You just don't know. One other thing just to mention real quick, we talk about the rookie quarterbacks, and, the rookie quarterbacks have been a big story this year. J.J. McCarthy, of course, is out this year because of an injury. Michael Penix probably is on a redshirt year. However, if Cousins gets injured, he will go in for Atlanta. They're in a win now mode in Atlanta, surprisingly as it seems. And that's why that 8th pick with Michael Penix was just ridiculous. But you talk about Drake May, you talk about Caleb Williams, and you talk about Jaden Daniels. Those are three guys who are going to be in the spotlight. Not everybody works out like C.J. Stroud did last year. And that's what I got to kind of say or sharpen or kind of mold my thoughts here, because don't over expect. And again, the Hard Knocks effect, Chicago Bears are on Hard Knocks. And I think that's part, Caleb Williams looks like a dragon slayer, but it's preseason. That's part of it. I think he's good, but I don't know if he's going to be the second coming of fantasy. Again, guy, listen, there's nothing wrong with letting somebody else make a pick.
Yeah.
Somebody else takes somebody. And, we haven't talked about this yet, real quick, and we got a couple secs. CeeDee Lamb signed late. He's in. I'm not worried about him. The Brandon Ayuk situation, that really bothers me in San Francisco. That's why I'm really not high on CMC, because I just think the chemistry in San Francisco is going to be a little kilter, going to be off kilter. And unless Ayuk gets in there, that was one of the reasons why CMC was so good. I'm not saying he's a bad player. He's a great player. I mean, yeah, you draft him number one. Okay, I get it. But my problem is I'm not getting a good feel from that team. And could there be a Super Bowl hangover? Could they have some issues? And again, the fact that as we tape this, the Ayuk situation still not clear. They may ship him off to Pittsburgh. I mean, that's the rumor. And if he goes to Pittsburgh, that is going to, your George Pickens pick, that could change that too. Although that gives him two great receivers. And you think if Russell can cook, that might not be a bad idea. I'm just saying. But we don't know. We just don't know. We are the Fantasy Sultans. We are happy you could join us on this podcast, stealing all our notes and stuff so you can beat us in fantasy football. But we don't care. You know why? Because we love giving. We do this for you. We'll have import-export starting for week 1 next week. Of course, you can catch the podcast on Spotify for podcasters and YouTube. Just search for the Fantasy Sultans. We're on the radio Sunday at noon. Give the stations again, Mike.
Yes, you can hear us on Fox Sports Radio New Jersey, 93.5 FM, 1450 AM. You could also hear us on 100.1 HD3 and 95.9 HD3. That's at the Jersey Shore. And of course, Fox Sports New Jersey across the state.
There you go. Okay.
We are.
That's good. That's going to wrap us up.
It's a Jersey thing with the Fantasy Sultans.
Yeah, that's right. Jersey. It's Jersey. It's like Wawa, good pizza, and bagels. All right. That is going to wrap up the Fantasy Sultans. Again, we give this to you. We want to help you win. He's the Hall of Famer, Mike Scheck. I'm Tripp Rogers. We are the Fantasy Sultans.
And you are not.